Aloha, I'm Casey Halper, your home chef, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use Hamakua mushrooms to add a nice touch to a steak dinner. This dinner is going to be very simple. We're going to use a bunch of local products. Let's see, we start with our Kulana beef tenderloin, which you can find at KTA. And that's going to be going with some spinach, the Hamakua mushrooms, and the mac nuts. And the spinach is grown by Hirabara Farms in Waimea. They're one of the top farms in the state, right here on Hawaii Island. And then we've got our Hamakua mushrooms grown out in Lapahoihoi. And we also got some nice mac nuts grown by a good friend of mine, Troy Keola Nui, up in Amaulu. So the first thing we're gonna do is try not to make too many dishes. We're gonna do this whole dish in one pan. So we're gonna start by lightly toasting our macadamia nuts. I'm gonna prefer a cast iron pan for this preparation. We're just gonna put the mac nuts in on low heat and let them toast for about 3 minutes. And you wanna make sure you kind of keep an eye on them because they will burn quickly. So those have toasted for about 5 minutes, and I'm gonna just set those aside. And then I'm gonna add my oil and start cooking my steak. And we're gonna turn the heat up to medium high. Now it's a good idea whenever you're cooking proteins, especially something like a steak, you wanna bring it out of the refrigerator about a half an hour before. And that's gonna allow it to come up to room temperature. And it's gonna be less of a shock on the protein, because when you take it from a very cold situation and you put it in a hot pan, it can tend to toughen the meat up a bit. We're gonna season the steak. It's gonna be a very simple seasoning. We got fresh cracked pepper and some seasoned salt. We're gonna wanna kind of get our pan nice and hot, because personally I like my steak medium rare, and if I put it into a pan that's not hot enough, we're gonna end up with an overcooked steak pretty quickly. So for the medium rare steak, we're gonna cook the steak for about 2 minutes on each side, and that's just based on the size of this steak. If you have a piece that's thicker, you cook it for longer.
Just move right into it.
I'm gonna put my oil in here. And again, we're gonna let that come up to a nice heat, and we can see the smoke is starting to come off of it now. I should grab my banana leaf oil splatter guard. So this should be ready. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in salt side down. I'm gonna take a second to season the other side of the steak. And again, this is the Kulana tenderloin. And they do have it at KTA every once in a while. You can see we got a nice crust on this one side. And again, it's going to be about 2 minutes on this second side. And then we're gonna take the steak out of the pan and let it rest. And what that's going to do is allow all of the juices that are inside. The thing to understand is a protein molecule is like a rubber band, and so it expands and contracts as you're heating it. And so if we take this steak that's hot and we cut it right away, all of the moisture that's inside the steak is going to fall out onto the plate. So by letting it sit on the plate for about 5 to 10 minutes, we're allowing those protein molecules to come back together. And so that rubber band isn't stretched out anymore. And while that's happening, we're going to use this same pan and we're going to cook our mushrooms and our spinach. And that's going to do two things. One, like I said earlier, we won't have to wash another pot, but it's also a good way to get more of that beef flavor into the mushrooms. Then I'm going to add a little butter. And then some garlic, and finally the spinach. Okay, so these are looking good. I'm going to add a fair amount of butter, because butter and steak are so good together. I'm going to add a pinch of garlic. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but it smells pretty good in here right now. So now we're going to add some of our Hirabara spinach. And a pinch of fresh herbs. And lastly, I'm going to put a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Now, does it sound like the pan is singing? Because it kind of sounds like the pan is singing. And I like what I'm hearing. So it's up to you if you want to. I'm going to put a little more butter into the pan just to finish it off. And that's pretty much it. And you can serve this dish with any side you want. If you want to do rice, mashed potatoes would be really good with it. Or you could just do extra veggies. I know a lot of people try to avoid the starches. Put our steak right on top. And then some of our toasted mac nuts. And a little garnish of fresh rosemary. And there you have it. It's our Kulana beef tenderloin with Hamakua mushrooms, Hirabara spinach, macadamia nuts from Troy Keola Nui, and looks pretty good to me. Mahalo for watching. I'm Casey Halpern, and I'm cooking Hawaii Fresh.